What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded. I am your great guest, James, from the Lore Reloaded, known as the one and only Lore Master. Going to move this so you can have a little bit of an issue. There we go. All right, so I'm going to throw a couple of things at you, then we're just going to get into it, as it was said. Hey, if you aren't following me on Twitch, please go to, if you aren't following me on Twitter, please go to Twitter right now, twitter.com/Lore Reloaded. Hit that follow button. There's actually a really cool thing going on with Twitter. You can follow me now on Twitter as well as YouTube. You can subscribe to me on YouTube absolutely free. Doesn't cost you a dime, so you guys should take advantage of that while it's still that way. Additionally, if you like what you see and you want to hang out and play some games, come hang out with me most nights at twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded. Have a lot of fun. And last but not least, hey, if you look in the top, we're going to say my left-hand corner, your left-hand corner, my right-hand corner, or maybe it's my right, you'll see the lore goal of the night. Always something I tend to aim for. It keeps the channel going, and you can do that via Super Chats. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Darth Kilhoun, always fun to see you here, good sir. Josh Street, the one, the only. Another Darth. We have a lot of Sith Lords today. Darth Revan, Nathan Norm, Denver Brock, Shronmore. That's right. Unleash the thumbs of lore. I'm going to start using that. Yes. I am definitively going to start using that. We also have Super Rob 114 Gaming, who is on time this time, which is very important. Admiral Saval, never a party without Admiral Saval. Ora Takawa, what's going on, good sir? And of course, my alter ego, Anti-Lore Reloaded. Laura, are you trying to blind us with the dancing? I am indeed trying to blind you with the dancing. Unfortunately, it's not going the way that I would have hoped it had went. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that. So hopefully we can get that changed at some point. My blinding of people. All right, so let's just jump into it. In space, does religion destroy everything, or is it even considered necessary? Wondering minds would like to know. Interestingly enough, when you watch science fiction, whether it be Star Trek, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be Expanse is a little bit of an exception, but whether it be almost any, even Orville, it seems like religion or a belief in God is either just not necessary, not seen, or is a negative. And this has some basis when you consider real life experiences. That is to say, the richer a nation or a state or a province is, the less likely the people are to believe in God, or the less they are a part of the quote-unquote faithful. So the question becomes, what's going on, part? The question, sincerely for me, becomes, is religion a bad thing necessarily? Is it a negative that is swept away once people have money? Or is this just something that Hollywood, or those who make the different series, want us to think? And I'm sincerely curious what you guys think about that, what your opinions are, and where to go from there. So I'm open to more of a conversation than we generally have. If not, of course, I can continue to drone on. I am somewhat like Morn in that way. I just won't stop talking. But I'm actually more curious what your thoughts are, what your opinions are, where we're coming from this, and why is it like that? And I think an add-on that would be interesting to this, just because we lose, just because faith is lost, or religion goes away, does that make it not real? Does that mean that there isn't a God, intrinsically? Nathan Norman, Warhammer 40k takes this up, and I feel quite well. Yeah, Warhammer 40k takes it to an unreasonable degree, and again, it makes religion look pretty negative. And so, is that where religion with humanity will ultimately lead to? Or is that just Hollywood trying to make us believe it? Darth Revan, I think religion is a personal thing and should not be pushed. I think it would come to your definition of what pushed is. I think we all have our own standards for what pushing might be. I don't disagree that ultimately religion is personal for most religions. Most religions have a personal connection, or you personally are doing something. But would that be part of the reason that it falls away? That as human beings, as humans, we tend to become tribes, and once that tribe is gone, does that mean that? Does that mean that it's all? Is that a good thing? I guess is the question I'm asking. Josh Street, the new Battlestar Galactica, does religion well in space? Uh, so, and by the way, in chat, we're going to need to be somewhat careful because I want to talk about religion and how it's looked at in sci-fi. I don't necessarily want to debate the actual existence of a god or the non-existence of a god. But looking at the Battlestar Galactica, I think that's that comes to an interesting conversation. You have the bad guys, the Cylons, who are monotheistic, who talk about God, and then go and really seems to have allusions more towards an Abrahamic faith, who goes on to commit a genocide that has untold numbers. Like, at least, how many colonies were there? 13? 13 genocides. I mean, a number that's probably incalculable by a human standard. And then you have the polytheistic, the ones who believe in, was it Greek? Gods that are running, and they aren't much better. They're willing to kill as much as the Cylons are, and they're pretty depraved when you look at it. So, is that just how religion will ultimately go? Now, juxtapose that, and I haven't watched all of it, I'll admit, but you juxtapose that in The Expanse, where religion, as far as I can tell so far, isn't necessarily put down all that much. You know? It's not negatively portrayed. It was 12 colonies that were nuclear genocides. Okay. I heard something about the volcanic eruption in Guatemala, Admiral Saval. It sucks. I hope they get help. I hope the world comes to help them out, but I haven't really seen much on it, if I'm being honest. Riminari, I believe religion is a natural human reaction to the fact that humans can conceive of their own existence and that humans want to explain everything. So let me ask you this, Riminari. Taking your opinion on what you think it is, how does that move forward? How do we, how would that go into space? If we ever achieve faster than light travel, if we begin to colonize the stars, what does religion look like? Or should religion be colonizing of the stars? I can't articulate my point with the limited word count, but the Bajorans did religion well, and DS9 handled that aspect of them well. I think it was a mixed bag. I think it depends on your definition of well, because I do think that there are positives and negatives to Deep Space Nine. Ultimately, Deep Space Nine somewhat, I think it handles the followers and how the followers look at religion and how they handle religion. I think it does that particularly well. And what I mean by that is if you look at how the Bajorans worship the prophets, or you look at how the Vorta and Jemadar worship the prophets. By the way, guys, last night I was at twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded. We were playing the new DLC. Had a ton of fun. You guys should come hang out with us sometimes. But back to what I was saying, which was it handles belief really well. It handles how, like, I love how Kira looks at religion. I like how Kira can believe but be respectful of other people's beliefs. And I think that that is intriguing, and that's done well. But ultimately, it kind of has a negative aspect when you consider that by Star Trek standards, at best, the Bajorans are worship a lowercase g god. And in fact, there is reason to justify that the changelings would be a lesser god, but still a god under these circumstances. And so I think I think it's a lot more nuanced and can have positives and negatives. Marinor, while speaking as a Christian, I'm happy that Star Trek treatment of religion because it doesn't, generally speaking, attack Christianity or Judaism or Islam. Don't watch The Next Generation, Marinor. Whatever you do, don't watch The Next Generation.
I'll watch it.
Don't, Lori. It absolutely bashes it. So yeah, I would not suggest that at all.
I just saw somebody with a lightsaber.
Girl. Love you.
Love you, and I just saw somebody
Okay, shh.
with a lightsaber.
Darth Revan. I'm educated by a Catholic school and had fights with the priest for multiple things. Okay. But again, moving into Deep Space Nine. Let's take a look at that. Should religion be talked about in science fiction, I guess? It's so broad. I'm trying to think of a way to bring it more focused, because a lot of people have been challenging on this. And I have to admit, when you do the research, when you look at the research of how religion works, the more prosperous, the more rich a country is, the less likely you have of belief, which I've stated before, which would mean that generally nations that go into space would have an atheistic worldview. So I guess, is the natural state for humanity when we get into space to be atheistic? By the way, again, I'm going to point this out. We're not going to specifically talk about what we agree or disagree with in religion specifically, but having to do with space, lore, and science fiction. And I'll stop any conversation that seems to go away from that. But yeah.
Dad, I love you.
I love you too. Do you want the Imperium of Man? As that is a religion to the extreme. Yeah. So again, that goes to my point. Hey girl, you may need to go downstairs to play, okay? So my point is that when portrayed, it's generally either negatively or it's taken to an extreme. And there doesn't seem to be a lot in the middle ground. Expanse does okay. I've heard that Babylon 5 does okay. I assume. Walking Annoyance and Darth Revan. Stop now.
Yes.
Welcome to Benjamin Go, becoming a lore master. Minor spoiler. No, don't delete it, Captain George. Just, guys, stop. Expanse Season 3 deals with religion. Pay attention to the clever blonde. I'm going to have to do that. For humanity to do what you say, we will need to be united. I don't see humanity united when religion still exists. Well, here's a question about that. If humanity's not going to be united really in any chance as long as we're like we are right now, right? We're very tribal. For instance, and thank you guys, I appreciate it. Didn't mean to get too annoyed there. So I apologize, Walking Annoyance and Darth Revan. I shouldn't have gotten annoyed like I did. I apologize. But look at secular people within the world right now. We've just found other ways to be divided. So now, instead of debating whether a God exists or not, you move to feminism, anti-feminism, conservative liberalism, stuff like that. So religion isn't really the main thing that divides us. So I don't think that that's going to be necessarily be an impediment I don't think religion is an impediment to getting into space. You know, I don't. If we're worried about being divided, religion's not going to do it. In the original series, there was religion even there. You had Catholicism, and in fact, that was one of the things I used. That's why I used that clip, and then I used Picard looking so drastically off-put, because that was the drastic change. Here's another question too. Religion. I hope this doesn't turn into the sci-fi religion channel unless we talk about how wonderful the emperor is. Yeah, that's definitely what's happening. In fact, it's becoming a complete religious channel. So you've nailed it. Babylon 5 actually had a multi-religious council of clerics from Earth, Minbari, and all other peoples with all known religious leanings. Look at the expanse with the Mormons. Do you think that when we get into space, religion can be like that? Do you think that religion can be where religious orders really just mind their own business and just want to spread the gospel? And not necessarily, at least as far as I can tell, haven't seen season 3, not necessarily move to try to infect everything. I actually like what I've seen of religion up until season 2, at least, in The Expanse. Deep Space Nine, as we said, did it fairly well, though all the believers are believing in what we would consider false gods. Insane Linguist, what's going on? And Babylon 5, I've seen a little bit, but I haven't seen enough to really know anything from it. Where does religion go? I hate to say this because my what am I trying to say? Regardless of what I believe, I think that once we hit space travel, once we get to the point of having more of a utopia, I don't think religion is going to proliferate. And that's not to say that a religion isn't necessarily right or wrong, or God exists or not. It just seems like that's what's happening on Earth, and so once we push into it. So really, moving aside of the derision that you see in TNG, the attack on TNG, do you think that when we get into space, religion's going to be gone for most parts? That you will see cults, but because of how advanced and how prosperous people are in theory, that's where it goes. Laura Actual, morning everyone. As I recall in the Orville, the Creole are super religious and the Union have a hard time understanding how they can still be religious and be advanced enough to be in space. Yeah, Laura Actual, that was kind of some of what spurred it. Some people were talking about religion and in space, Bajorans, things, Maquis, stuff like that. And it got me to thinking about the Orville specifically. When they mention that and they say that, it got me to thinking about how TNG, DS9 treats it and things of that nature. By the way, Sean Widowson in the house helping out with Super Chats. By the way, guys, as I stated, the lore goal is what helps out and keeps the channel running, so every time I appreciate it. Watching from New Zealand, just got in. Can I get a recap of the conversation? So the recap of the conversation is simply, we've been discussing how religion is treated in science fiction. TNG, Deep Space Nine, Expanse, Babylon 5, Warhammer 40k. Most times, it is either treated that religion is no longer necessary, like Orville, or it is put down and attacked as a mythos, like TNG. It's done pretty well in Deep Space Nine and Expanse. And also, just a discussion of once we get to space, once we get to TNG or whatnot, is it still going to be there? And this is still bugging me, so I'm going to say it again. Darth Redovan and Walking Annoyance, I apologize. I shouldn't have gotten frustrated with you guys. That actually wasn't even towards you. I mean, I didn't want to talk about what you guys were talking about, but I should not have gotten terse with you like I did. So I hope you accept my apology. Darth Revan asks, what do you think of Stargate Universe Series 2 ending by going to look for God's signal? So Stargate's an interesting show. I'm getting towards the end so I can start doing lore on it. One thing I do appreciate about Stargate is that it does bring religion in, but I would have to agree that while it's negative on religion, it's negative on false religion. I don't feel like they attack religion or the religious just straight out. Just when people are being misled overtly, I think they do a good job of putting that. I haven't gotten that anti religious vibe, so to say. Red Snopa, what did Laura do? Now I didn't want to get too much into Christianity and has it killed people or does it say to kill people or anything like that? And I saw them talking about it, and I was unnecessarily hostile about it. In my mind, first contact is usually a severe blow to any established religion, as it called into question and or outright contradicts pretty much all of the creation myth. In my mind, first contact is usually a severe... How does first contact contradict the creation myth? I don't see that necessarily. Sean Wooderson, I agree that DS9 and Trek in general does a good job to portray religion, but there are bad episodes. TNG does not. TNG hates religion. And Deep Space Nine goes along with the All-Terrans and most of Starfleet is secular thing, which I hate. I think Deep Space Nine does it all right. An interesting thing, you know, a series that I think treated religion well with an asterisk. And the asterisk would be the way they looked at the religious and Native Americans would be Voyager. And hear me out on this. Bird of Prey 5, hope you're doing well. Hear me out on this. Let's remove again the way they treated the American Indians and how they tried to with that old stuff. There was an episode, and I forget the name of it, but there was an episode where it was strictly about religion with Janeway. And I forget exactly her point. She either had to get some kind of cure or she had to save some crewmen or something like that. And effectively, she walks into what she considers this like heavily religious place. And she thinks she has to go through this religious journey. And she just goes through utter hell. I mean, they make her do all kinds of physical and mental gymnastics and all this arduous stuff. But it starts out with her walking into a room and there's a lady right there and she sits down and she's expecting all of this arduous stuff. And, you know, she's talking, she's like, what's going on? What's the next move? What's the test? And so someone comes and gets her and runs her through just this rigmarole. All of it to end up right back at talking to the lady, and she's the older lady, and she's like, what's going on here? What did I just go through? And the lady effectively says, for all intents and purposes, you know, you put yourself through that. We didn't. This is what you expected this entire religious process to be. It doesn't have to be that. It can, but it doesn't have to be. Yes. Oxymoron 1989, welcome to becoming a lore master. And so ultimately she just stays there and sits there and has this out-of-body experience. It may have been out-of-body, but something that it would seem supernatural. And she gets the cure and she goes back up and she realizes that just because we think religion or some religious process is one way, it doesn't have to be that way. And it ends with her not knowing if she actually had a religious experience or not. It leaves it up in the air. I thought it was done really well. I probably butchered the episode. If I can find it, I'm going to suggest you guys watch it. There are some times that Voyager does really well, in my opinion. Path Unwritten. Okay, elephant in the room. Get into space and religion is one thing. Get into space. and their worship is frowned upon, but the invisible gods, the Adria, are worshipped in the eight divine. No, whoops, I tried to mix two people. Okay, elephant in the room, get into space and religion is one thing. Get into space and encounter new life, another thing. Get into space and find a race with religion, more evidence. What's going on, Emperor of Energy? I think that if you found another race that was similar to ours and they had a religious experience, they had a religion, I don't think that proves one thing one way or the other. It just means that they have similar aspects to humanity. I also don't think that the existence of another species or an alien species is disproof of a religion or a god. Bird of Prey, you were saying it was Sacred Ground. That may have been it. I don't know. I thought it was done really well. I liked it. It stuck with me. Josh, give me a little bit more information. What about the Sky People from Voyager? Sky People. Is that the one where Voyager's stuck and the people under the planet is moving at like centuries upon centuries? Voltage 483, what's going on, buddy? By the way, I did see you message me on my Discord. I'm not good at responding because I'm so busy with stuff. I'm still a bit confused. Is Q actually a god? I don't think there's ever been a one way or the other that proof that Q is a god. I personally believe that Q would probably be considered a lowercase g god, but I also treat him somewhat like Thor from Marvel. At least the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where the technology is so advanced that to us, it looks like he's a god. So there is, I think that he uses technology that is indistinguishable from magic, but I don't believe that he is what we would consider the god. Let's see. Barge of the Damned. That's an interesting one. Now, it's been a long time since I've seen... again, a lot of people get upset at Voyager, and for good reason. Voyager has bad writing. It has inconsistencies. But they do have good episodes, even when it comes to religion. I think Barge of the Damned would be a good one, too. Because you never really know. And I guess maybe when it comes to writing, I like that there is no definitives when they try to do it. I guess that's what the writing I enjoy, because there's no definitives in real life. You know? Was there actually a Stovacor? Did she help anybody, or was it all in her mind? No, my daughter headed down for a little bit. So, yeah. Clark Stark, the reimagined Klingons in the Discoverse treat Kahless as a god figure. Will be interesting to see where they go with it. The reimagined Klingons. Yeah, I mean, if they even go into it. Hello, Jess Hull. What is going on? Why does Q hate Guinan? He seems scared of her. I've gotten a request to do a breakdown on Guinan, which I intend to do probably next week. Because Q feared Guinan, and Guinan struck a pose like she was about to actually fight him. I think there's more to Guinan's species, the El-Orians, than we leave it to be. Funny say you like the Barge of the Darned, so that I'm not cursing, because there is another channel that said it's a terrible episode because it's not rational. Sure, you're going to find both sides that are going to get upset because, they treated religion this way or that way. My personal preference when it comes to writing of religion is to just be fair about it, honestly. I think writing is detrimental if it goes one way or the other. Now, that's a personal thing, I'll admit. But the fact that we don't know, and right now... the fact that we don't know, and that currently science can't prove one way or the other. By the way, welcome, Patrick Mabahi. The fact that we can't prove one way or the other leaves it up to some interpretation. And so I guess I like to see that conversation. Uh, if and I don't mind having a leaning, in fact, though. So, for instance, if you wanted to have Picard be an atheist because of everything he's seen and everything he's done, that's fair. Well, let's Deep Space Nine. Let's go Deep Space Nine. I think that's a good juxtaposition. At the beginning, they didn't do it as well, but if you look at the juxtaposition between definitively Terrans, most likely most of Starfleet, versus the Bajorans, and specifically the Bajorans as realized by Kira, that's a good juxtaposition between those who don't believe and those who do. And to watch Cisco go from being an atheist, a strict secular human being, to ultimately believing that the prophets are gods. And to see the positives and the negatives of that, because there were positives to what happened with him, but there were also negatives. He in some points, he chose Bajor. He chose the prophets over his son, over his, I don't know if she was fiancée, wife, or girlfriend at that time. So there are positives and negatives to it. Jess Hull, I like that episode where Neelix dies and gets all depressed because he didn't meet his dead family. Yeah, he doesn't remember anything, if I remember that one correctly. And then he goes through the spirit walk, which tells him that there is no God or something. That one I vaguely remember. That was interesting too, and I think that the fact that you have Chakotay coming back and saying, you know, you can't just because you think this is the way it came, just because it looks like this is what it is, doesn't mean that's what it is. You have to sit down, you have to analyze. These are questions that'll take most of your life for you to figure out, right? Don Juan, I don't think you were here at the beginning, by the way. Welcome, Don Juan. I'm wanting to talk more about science fiction and lore within Star Trek, within science fiction, not necessarily having a debate about actual religion or what atheists believe or don't believe. But on that topic, I will talk about it for a second. Not all atheists believe that the Big Bang existed or occurred. The Delta Flyer reaching warp 10 is far less believable than being a god. Sure, of that I would agree. Voltage. TNG almost makes fun of religion. I mean, Q sometimes seems satirical to religion. I personally don't like that. TNG is downright hostile towards religion. I mean, just unreasonably so. A lot. The only thing that I found that Star Trek hates more than religion is evolution. Because there's no way that you can have what happened in Threshold. There's no way you can have what happened in Enterprise, in TNG, unless you absolutely hate evolution. So there is that. Yeah. Red Snopia, Garleans in Final Fantasy outlaw religion because magic is real and worshiping a god can summon a terrible. That's is that from Final Fantasy? What is it? 10 or 11? Not 10. 11 maybe. Which is intriguing. So if magic did exist, or you could summon, I forget what they're called in Final Fantasy, but effectively what would look like gods. I mean, they do all kinds of horrific things. I could see how you would outright ban religion. By the way, guys, 67 people watching and only 23 likes. I'm also talking about religion. I can't imagine that I wouldn't have 40 dislikes. Final Fantasy 14. Okay. We don't talk about episodes that rank a 0 on SF Debris. SF Debris is awesome. I like SF Debris. But yeah, so I guess my question would be...
Yes!
First, will everyone say welcome to Caden Overstreet for becoming a lore master? But secondly, can religion, from the Orville perspective, Bird of Prey super chatted $2. What? Picard is hostile to I'll come back to you, Bird of Prey, in just a second. By the way, thanks for the super chats. Guys, those help out so much. the can religion survive the space age? Can religion survive when we ultimately gain faster than light and colonize the stars? Uh, and if so, what form will it take? This isn't speaking to, and I'll say this again, this isn't speaking to whether God exists, whether religion is good or bad. Historically, welcome Roman Total War, becoming a lore master. Historically, religion generally stays in what would be considered dystopian areas, less religious areas. For the United States specifically, if you look at the states per capita, how much a state is, how wealthy a state is, states with lower amount of wealth are religious. States with higher amount of wealth are not religious. It's just the way it is. How does that look in science fiction? Not science fiction, how does that look in space? How does that advance for us? Will we have something like Expanse, but unlike the Mormons, you have the UN, you have Mars, and then you have Belters, and Belters are extremely religious because they live in just utter trash, utter filth. Bird of Prey 5. Picard is hostile to religion. Crew, not so much. No, I have to disagree with you. Now, Picard is openly that way. He is openly hostile, but the crew generally mimics what he says and generally goes the way that he does. Anything that is capitalistic, anything that has war, anything that has religion, they aren't as vocal, but they do have that dismissiveness. They do have that hatred, I think. So I'd have to disagree with you to a degree, Bird of Prey 5, because I do think that they have a disdain, we'll say, for it. And where do we go with that? Is that what it's going to be? Orville. Orville, I think, does it all right, because in Orville, it seems to me, and I could be wrong on this, but from what I remember, Orville doesn't hate religion. They're either just confused by it or have a casual indifference towards it. What's going on, King Mighty? Hope you're doing well. Technically, Tom Paris does have kids with Janeway. Marlinda Fish, always good to see you. Greetings from Slovakia. Could you please elaborate how Star Trek hates evolution? By the way, this is the first time I actually caught the live stream because of the time zone change. Well, I'm glad you're liking it. Welcome, I'm guessing Russian name, to becoming a lore master. So, the reason why I say Star Trek hates evolution, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I say that rather tongue-in-cheek because they don't know what evolution is. The writers don't know how evolution works. And so when they explain evolution or they go through it, they do it so utterly preposterously that I would think that the dialogue in TNG and Enterprise and DS9, I would think that the dialogue was written by the most uneducated creationist you could find when it comes to evolution. Bird of Prey, Worf equal religious. If we remember what Worf said specifically, gods were too much trouble, so they killed their gods. So I'm pretty sure that he wasn't very religious, given that he killed the gods and thus made it so the world didn't have any gods. He may have had some... I don't even know that I'd call it religious. He did believe in Stovacor, so I'll give you that. I don't know. It's interesting, because Worf has both sides. Beverly believed in ghosts. You have atheists that believe in ghosts. That doesn't mean you're religious, nor does it believe you believe in a god. It doesn't mean that you have a religion. Ghosts can exist without a god. They can exist without a religion. And I don't know that Beverly actually believed in ghosts. Because, again, all the things that occurred generally can be explained away as not being ghosts. Wesley equals thought and space, not different. Wesley is, in fact, the worst example you could ever give, Bird of Prey. Wesley is proof that God does not exist, and that if God exists, he died a long time ago. Wesley and the actor who plays Wesley is the best example of why God doesn't exist. Jordy thought his mom turned into a spirit. I don't know if he thought his mom turned into a spirit or use that as an explanation, but again, let's just assume that he did. Spirits and ghosts do not prove that they're a religion, do not prove that there is a God. In fact, you have atheists that will believe in ghosts or believe in karma or believe in all forms of things. SC2 Owl, you can be religious and an atheist, you know. Sure, so let's define what I'm trying to say here. Yes, I think that you could be religious and an atheist, depending on how you define religious. But when I say religious, I mean what we consider religion. A person who's like a Catholic or believes in a God or things like that. There are ways to use the religious or to have a religion and it not be what I'm trying to portray. Unfortunately, the English language can be very poor when it comes to describing things. Killing gods counts as theism. I don't know. I mean, if you can kill a god, are you still theistic? Is it still a god? I mean, is it? Rob, oh, not talking to me. Some atheists may even believe in heaven and hell. Yeah, and that's true. Some atheists may believe that there is an afterlife that would be defined as heaven and hell. So, when we're talking about specifically God belief, and maybe I should say that, to quote the Drunken Peasants, God believer. But yeah, so we're talking about necessarily God belief. Maybe that is a more intricate way of talking about it. Now, I generally don't get into my beliefs or anything like that. I will say this. I think it's unfortunate, and don't read this because this isn't giving away my belief of what I believe, but and I think some atheists would agree with this. I think it's unfortunate if this is all there is, and I think that's sad. And it is cruel in a way. I mean, it doesn't change it if that's the way it is. If there is no God and we just exist as we do, then, I mean, it is what it is. But it's almost cruel in a way. As technology increases, we ourselves will be closer to what we see as gods. TNG shows this when Picard is treated as a god. Yeah, I mean, again, that goes back to the Q thing. The Q have basically technology that is indistinguishable from God, and so that could be what it is as well. Let's see. There was someone who had a question? Didn't they kill a god in Star Trek V? No, they went out of their way to show that even wasn't a god. Dude believed it was a god. Star Trek V is such bad writing. Let me know if that's too much, guys. Me and my daughter are just getting a little hot. Look at the Last Airbender universe. In their lore, well, then I was. Look at the Last Airbender universe. In their lore, many spirits, spirit world, reincarnation, and no mention of gods. Sure. And again, anyone who thinks that you can't have a heaven or hell or that you can't believe in ghosts and not believe in a god, I would encourage you to look into that a little bit more. I think you'd be surprised. About First Contact, the Shia Imam Jafar once took... About First Contact... Are you talking about Star Trek First Contact? I don't remember that at all. There was an imam in First Contact? Or are you talking about another series? Because that doesn't sound anything like... When I think First Contact, I think Star Trek First Contact. Voyager says Q aren't omnipotent. Okay. By the way, Cyprian, can you tell me, can you spell out your name phonetically in English? I'd be curious how you say that, because I have no idea how to say that name. So I'd suggest technological progression is far less prevalent than human nature's progression, and I haven't seen much change in the last several thousand years there. Sean Widowson, again, thank you so much for helping out. This is all very, very much appreciated. How would the other Star Trek captains deal with Sisko's situation as a religious figure? How would they deal with it and act in the same situation? So, interestingly enough, we see the juxtaposition of Sisko versus Admiral Ross, where Admiral Ross seems uncomfortable, where Admiral Ross seems very uncomfortable talking about the Bajorans, the prophets, and the faith when Sisko is saying, you know, I now believe this. I think they're real. I think they're gods. And you see, it's actually very, very well acted. Admiral Ross looks extremely uncomfortable in the situation. And so I think that's a good juxtaposition. But how would other Star Trek captains deal with Sisko's situation as a religious figure? I think most of them would have a problem from a prime directive standpoint, and generally would just be off-put. I think that the worst case would probably be Picard, who would maybe be diplomatic and not move towards it, but would be offended that a Starfleet officer, especially a Terran Starfleet officer, would have faith, would believe in a god. And that Starfleet officer would continue to lead a planet that wants to become a part of Starfleet into the Dark Ages. For all intents and purposes, Who Watches the Watcher, it's a modified version of Who Watches the Watcher, and we see how Picard acted in that. He was indignant. He was angry. He hated the fact that religion existed. He thought it better when they didn't believe. It was the Dark Ages. So you can imagine how he would react when he saw Sisko doing effectively what I think he would compare to his own point of view. At Lore Reloaded, Admiral Ross, who kills Jadzia and thousands of Starfleet officers by not listening to Sisko's warnings because they come from quote-unquote gods. Sergey, that's how you say your name, Sergey. I'm going to forget that, my friend, but I'll try to remember. But I am going to forget. To be fair to Admiral Ross, there's no reason that you would back the prophets or believe what they said. Even Sisko, you know, their chosen one did not. So... Don Juan, some people believe if we get into space, then religion is just gone. I don't think that. I think that as long as we have a tribal nature, regardless, and again, I can't believe I keep having to say this. What I'm about to say doesn't mean that a god exists or doesn't exist. But as long as we stay a tribal species, there will always be a religion to some form or another, for better or worse. Couldn't the prophets have altered Sisko's brain to work for them so he will make the daughter like they did with the mother? I mean, it's possible. What's going on, Paladin Demo? Or Demo? That's possible. I never really thought of it like that. It seems like his progression would be natural. So, I don't know. It is possible. Did Ross or other admirals meet them, barring Sisko? No. Josh Street, Bylor, gotta go, and don't lose your mind with this can of worms. I won't talk to you later, Josh Street. No. The only ones that really met the prophets, I believe, it wasn't admirals for sure. It was Sisko, and generally wasn't it the Bajorans at that point? Nathan Norman says, I think you would end up with Templar-like organizations that have their own territory separate from the rest of humanity, where they only enforce their religion like the Crusader kingdoms of old. I could see us doing that. I think it's interesting. When we go into space, it is possible that we would move back to a fiefdom-like standpoint, you know? And I can see that. To a degree, that has some reasonable points to it, you know? It just depends on how dystopian it becomes. ST2Al, we are a deeply spiritual species, and theism is a very convenient way to scratch that itch. So agreed, gods will stay a thing. I think that we are. I think we're moving away from that. I think that humanity is becoming less than spiritual. Insane linguist, isn't the Starfleet gospel, as this SF Debris would put it, a sort of quasi-religion to the Starfleet officers in general, albeit one without a deity? Yes, I've talked about this before, and this may be its own topic. This is what angers me, especially in the next generation. The next generation, they want to talk about how everyone's secular, how God doesn't exist, it's dark times, mythos, yeah. This comes off as poorly written. It's so badly written. Like evolution, I would believe that it was written by people who this is what they think atheist and secular people think and would do, not what actually secularists and atheists would do. Starfleet, for every Starfleet personnel that has removed religion, doesn't believe in it, secular, doesn't believe in a god, for all of them, they have replaced it with the Prime Directive. They have basically said that in the next generation, there is a God-sized hole in your heart. And for those who don't believe in the Prime Directive. They replaced it with something else. Faith and scientific advancement can work if people don't want to be religious. That follows a lot of sci-fi writing. Okay. Religion is based on the is what? You know, here's an interesting thing. I think I don't get too I think that if you're religious or if you believe in a god or gods, it takes faith. It takes a belief in something other than yourself. I don't know that it has to disagree with science, but I don't think it's wise. I'll say that. I don't think it's wise to disregard science. But I can understand how someone might not accept clearly defined science because they have faith. And I don't necessarily get mad at that, though I do think that it is an egregious way to... I think it's egregious and will stifle your ability to grow. And I do understand and can see how and why people who are religious can be considered closed-minded. Because if you open your mind, there is a really good chance that you'll stop believing in God. Whether he exists or not, or gods, whether they exist or not, someone who is more open-minded, I think, is more likely to become a secular or an atheist or an agnostic. And you guys are really getting me to want to watch Babylon 5. I'm going to have to watch Babylon 5 at this point. Because I would love to point at something that is the pinnacle of treating spirituality correctly, or at least just being fair to it. That's what I hate, I guess, about science fiction now. What I hate about what they're doing is that you can never be fair. You're either all for the cause or you're against the cause. It really feels like. Yeah. Don Juan, if I open my mind, I'll refuse God. Give me a break. That is what we would call a straw man, my good friend Don Juan. I said if you're open-minded, you are more likely to become atheist or secular. Not that you would become atheist or secular. For instance, let me give you an example. If you live in Saudi Arabia, you are more likely to become a part of the Islamic faith. If you live in the United States, you are more likely to become Christian. If you lived on the if you had to share a room with Wesley, you are more likely to believe that you are in hell. So the being more likely doesn't mean you are, or doesn't mean you will. People who have quote unquote been open-minded seem to be more likely to become atheists. In fact, my good friend, depending on what you believe, that would actually be consistent with most religions, especially the Abrahamic faiths, which says that to follow religion is the narrow path, not the wide path. Don Juan, you don't have to be a part of a religion to have faith. I agree. I don't think I ever said that. And if I did, I stand corrected. Jess Hull really likes Babylon 5. I think I am too, based on everything I've heard. I resisted it for a long time, and I'm watching it now, and it's really good. We'll have to take a look at that. Why do you S on Wesley so much? Why do you crap on Wesley so much? That's fair. So, walking annoyance, that's a fair question. So, why do I S on Wesley? I S on Wesley because just like a biological imperative, I have to breathe. I have to eat, or I'll die. When I see something that is so horrific, just the pinnacle of disgust immortalized, I have to comment on that. Also, don't care too much for the actor either. I know my friends who are friends of Bill W. all have a higher power, even if that higher power is a little green rock. Okay. And that's true. I mean, Will Wheaton. The one thing Will Wheaton and I will agree on, and we will agree on nothing else. We are the exact opposite. The one thing that Will Wheaton and I will agree on is that Wesley Crusher was a horrible actor. Do you know much about Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine copyright stuff? What's specifically your question, Sean? I can try to answer. Walking annoyance. Why don't I like Wesley Crusher? Poorly written Mary Sue character that can do nothing wrong and comes off as a creeper in some deleted scenes. Never added anything to the show when he was on it. He was even more of a Mary Sue than Michael Burnham ever will be. And I find Will Wheaton as a person to not be someone I would care to interact with. Bill W is an AA. Who's Bill W? I wonder would the Bajoran religion survive as Riker ordered to remove the earrings to be removed and the prophets cannot leave the wormhole and the top brass call them wormhole lilies. I don't think they'd ever be required to remove or stop believing. Burnham versus Wesley versus Neelix. I mean, Neelix isn't anywhere near Burnham and Wesley for my disdain. Wesley would be worse than Burnham, in my opinion, and is. This isn't the first time you kicked this particular hornet's nest. Why? Also, hail Morrigan, the bloody battle crow shall one day take us all. I enjoy conversations. I like talking. I didn't know I talked about this before. I didn't think that I had, but you know, I enjoy having a conversation, even if we disagree. DS9 copy in Babylon 5. That's what you're talking about when it comes to copyright. Okay, I'm sorry. When I think copyright, I think CBS stealing my money. So when Will Wheaton is nothing good. So whoever said that, STOL, I will ban you. Don't ever say Will Wheaton is anything good. Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5. I don't think that Deep Space Nine tried to copy Babylon 5. If you haven't heard of him, the Lore Runner has an interesting theory that I kind of lean towards. Whereas they were approached for Babylon 5, and they turned it down. And I think that the execs who take the pitches are different from the execs who do the writing. However, they all are under the same company. They all work for the same people, and they're probably all under the same roof. And so it's possible that the guys who turned down the pitch had talked to somebody who talked to somebody who talked to somebody who was looking at a pitch for Star Trek and had gotten wind of it. I don't think it was done on purpose. I don't think it was done on purpose at all. I don't think it was malicious. And yeah, I do in fact enjoy getting having conversations and debates and stuff. Not debates. I enjoy having conversations. I enjoy that quite a bit, if I'm being completely honest, as it were. So, let's see. Oh, all right, everybody. All right. Even though we're getting towards the end, everybody relax. Whew. Travis is here. Finally. Party can start. Lore Reloaded, in all seriousness, what is it about Will Wheaton specifically that you don't like? I'm just curious, as I hated the character, but I don't know much. I mean, I don't necessarily want to talk or get into my dislikes of Will Wheaton. I'll just say that he is probably the pinnacle of far left social justice warrior parody that you can find. Self-righteous. Again, I'm sure he doesn't care about me. And the difference between him and me is that he has a ton of money that he can do all kinds of things with, whereas I just make money off YouTube. So I mean, I don't like his politics. I don't like who he acts as a person. All you have to do is go to his YouTube and watch like 3 of them to get the self-righteous indignation that he has for anything that he doesn't believe in. And honestly, I'd be, if I met the guy, I'd be civil towards him. I'd be nice, but I have no interest in meeting him. And if I was ever at a con, I wouldn't go out of my way. Thomas Potts gives $1.99 to help. Thanks so much. Rocking it out. It helps support the channel and keeps it going. You people rock when it comes to that. The party has started. I'll get it blasting. Yeah, who doesn't like music? All right, guys, so we're going to end it here. I will be doing a Geek Breakdown tonight. Lore Actual helping out with $5. Thank you so much. Very appreciated, Lore Actual. And if you guys want me to play anything or you have any questions, we can talk about it. But unless we want to move forward on this, I'll be doing a stream tonight in less than an hour, in less than 30 minutes. I'll be coming out with the Starship lore of the Dodera decks, and we'll be breaking that down, which I think will be a lot of fun. And then I don't know. We're gonna probably put someone else on trial tonight, though I'm not sure who. Probably like Jellicoe, or not Jellicoe, like I don't know. We'll have to think about it. And yeah, I know Will Wheaton will block you if you say "Shut up, Wesley," but he can't do that in real life. That might be one reason I come up to see him, get it recorded, like just come like within 2 meters of him, and then just scream at the top of my lungs, "Shut up, Wesley," just to see how he reacts. Yeah, I may do Borg versus the Stargate 1 replicators. That would be interesting. Dodera decks. When will you play Star Trek New Horizons, the Stellaris mod? I can play it on Twitch TV if you guys want me to, if a lot of people have a request for it. All right, guys, I think that's where we are going to end it. I want to thank you guys so much for coming out, hanging out. In less than 30 minutes, we'll be going live with Starship Lore and the Dodera decks. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.